What is something you deeply regret doing as a child that still affects you to this day? Being so mean to my younger sister in our childhood. I often wonder how much I contributed to her current mental health struggles. It eats me alive some days. As a younger sister of a very mean one, do tell her. Mine did in our 30s, and I cried my eyes out of relief, because the child inside you, even though adult you knows better, still feels like there is something wrong with him, her in order to deserve that. And yes, serious damage can be done. It's not easy growing up being hurt by someone who is supposed to protect you. I forgave her, and although at least in our case something is broken forever, we have now the chance to be as close as we can in this new circumstances. Smiley face. I wish the best for your sister and you. And remember that it wasn't your sole responsibility. The adult around should have interfered or taught you better, helped you open your eyes sooner. Main reason I forgave my sister is because she was 7 years older than me but quite young too. And even though I got the worst part of it, I know it hurt her too. In middle school I jumped from the top of a slide and landed flat on the bottom, hurting my back. Pretty sure I've never recovered. That's weird. I believe I can pinpoint the start of my lifelong back pain issues to when I was young and pretending I was the Hulk and tried to lift something way too heavy for me to do so. I recall feeling something give in my lower back, and here I am at 50+ years of age with an ice pack on the same spot, talking about it on the internet. Might be a coincidence, maybe not. Same. An old lady rear-ended me while I was stopped at a red light on my motorcycle. My back hasn't been the same since. 18-year-old me thought I'd be just fine though. In my school a dude, who lived in the apartment for those who live away from the city school as in, was dared to either wear women's clothes for a day or jump off second floor. Guess what he did? Yes, he not only fucking jumped, but also did it from another person's room, right at a metal rod that grapes were once growing on. He lived by a fucking miracle. I once jumped from a 5-meter trampoline, landed on my belly. Nah, it wasn't that bad, water, after all, but hurt quite a bit. So lads, be careful when jumping. Here too. I fell out of the car and broke my leg when I was 2. I was in a body cast that went from my ankle to my chest and down to the knee on the other leg. It was miserable. I always knew about this growing up, but it wasn't until I was in my 30s that my dad mentioned the doctors told him and my mom that I'd have back problems my whole life from how the leg broke and healed. My sophomore year of college I lived on the bottom level of an on-campus apartment complex. One night we were having a party and this guy came stumbling in. Apparently his third-floor apartment party got busted by the cops and he decided to jump out of the window. Would be curious to hear how his back and/or limbs are holding up 17 years later. I remember jumping off the back of a truck as a kid and pulling a muscle in my back. Could barely move the next day and was sobbing while my dad insisted I still had to go to school. I still to this day have problems with that same spot and I'm in my 30s. I can pull it very easily and have heard it doing simple shit like just moving, twisting wrong. I had a very similar story. Back in high school I was messing around with a couple of friends top of a shipping container. It got to the point where we had to get down so I sat on the edge, slid off and tried to land. When I did my knees buckled and I bent backwards just slightly, making my back absorb all the force. In that moment I fractured my spine and herniated my disc. Ever since then I've always had horrible back problems. I constantly re-herniate my disc causing extreme pain for 4 days and then it slowly goes away. In about a week's time I'm back to normal. I'm extremely careful and deliberate with all my movements so I don't injure myself again, but sometimes it doesn't matter what I do. Just in this past year I've herniated my disc 3 times and doctors refuse to do anything about it other than treat me with medications and PT because I'm young, fit, and healthy. I don't think I'll ever return back to normal. I expect within the next 10 years I'll finally be allowed back surgery because I will be in my 30s. I can't even play the sports I want to without fear of hurting my back. Sad face. I used to love sneaking out of class and wandering the halls in 2nd grade. I used to say I needed to use the restroom but instead would spend 15 minutes sliding down handrails and peeking in classrooms. I slipped from one of those banisters once and fell in such a bad way. I could feel the damage on my back as I slid a whole flight downwards. The memory has never faded. When I was 13 or 14, I saw one of my lifelong friends walking down the street, blank stare with her makeup running. I was on my bicycle racing to get home before my 8 p.m. curfew, so I didn't stop to talk to her. She committed suicide that night, and I was the last person to see her alive. I went through intense therapy after that, as I was filled with guilt and grief. I still have issues with that guilt today, some 21 years later. Oh my fucking god, this isn't your fault at all. This is terribly sad for both of you. I hope you know that this is not your fault. I wish I could hug you, and her. Oh, I know it's not my fault. I blamed myself heavily after it happened. Therapy helped. Talking about it helped. Our friend group was really supportive of me as well, which was great. She had numerous stuff going on that no one, including her, had any control over, and it all became too much. She was my first friend I had die, and we were friends since preschool. Probably why I took it so hard. After every Thanksgiving dinner as a child, my grandpa would put a plate of food together for a man named Mr. Bailey who lived by himself and didn't have family in town. He'd drive over to his house, drop the food off, talk for 5 to 10 minutes, and then come back. I didn't know this. One year after our meal, my grandpa handed me a plate with a slice of pumpkin pie on it and told me to get in the backseat of his truck. I didn't ask questions and hopped in with the pie. We get to our destination and my grandpa opens my door and says, "You have the pie." "What do you mean, Grandpa?" "I ate it." I thought the pie was for me. I ate it in the backseat on the car ride like it was a brownie. Mr. Bailey didn't get any pumpkin pie that year. I still can't look at pumpkin pie without feeling bad about it. I took everything to heart. All the insults, all the failures, all the minor mishaps. I couldn't just let it pass me by. It hit me right in the heart, which is why my current mental health leaves a lot to be desired. Giving my knees floor burn for fun. I don't have a clue why I thought it was fun. Now they are in an awful state and completely covered in scars. When I was 4, a neighbor girl and I became friends. I invited her over one day to play. We were playing with dog food. It was fake food. Well, she started eating it. I screamed at her and called her nasty and was just shitty. Told her I didn't want to play with her anymore. As it turned out, the poor girl was severely neglected. Her parents never had food, so she was basically starving. It didn't dawn on me until I saw that they were kicked from their home and it was condemned and torn down a year after. I remember I went over to play one time and the house smelled like rotting hamburger meat. There were cockroaches everywhere. It was traumatizing. I cannot imagine living there. I have tried to find the girl via social media with no luck. I feel you, man. I had a rugby mate. He always got a sandwich from my dad every Thursday, and I got nothing, and I used to think my dad was a prick until it dawned on me. The kid was poor and my dad was being kind, and to realize one of your buddies is struggling, man, I felt so bad. I told my mom and she told me to bring him home to dinner. And from then on, he would visit me often when I was sick or when I had lost someone. When my parents split, he was there to help me cope. True, we weren't the best of friends, and we haven't talked in years, saving a few crossings of our paths in the neighborhood. He passed away last month. Leukemia. It hurt me a lot to hear that. He was such a good man whom deserved so much from life. Edit. Thanks everybody for the kind comments. Let me tell you a little about this dude. He had the greenest thumb ever. He brought back to life so many plants, and he loved selling them, nurturing them, tending to them. Truth be told, I thought this guy would outlive me. I kind of feel bad not seeing him again. I got to turn 29 this year. He didn't. This sucks, but at least he's away from all the suffering, and I really hope there's a heaven so I can meet him again, and I hope when I do he's fat as a cow for all of those meals he couldn't get. You deserve it, Nacho. Not food related, but sexual abuse and child neglect. My dad had friends who had a 6-year-old daughter. I was around 8 when I knew her, so we played together a lot. But she always wanted to play house, and would make me be the wife, while she was the husband, and would always try to make advances on me. touch me inappropriately, try to kiss me, etc. I knew it was wrong and would always refuse and shut it down when it got to that and would try to play something else, but she would say, "That's how families work," and would cry if I didn't. I always just let her cry about it because I did not want to be in that situation. It was wrong. And I was older, so it looks bad on me especially. I was scared of telling my parents though because again, I was older so I knew better, even though I wouldn't let it happen. But she told her aunt one day that I wouldn't let her do those things to me, and she told my dad, who in turn pretty much said, "Absolutely the fuck not, I'm not letting my daughter be in that situation, they're not playing together anymore." So I never played with her again. Which sucked to me because she was a great kid and we didn't really have kids around my age in my family that I could play with, but I was also okay with it because she wouldn't play any other game I suggested that didn't involve sexual things. I wasn't told why she got taken from her parents a few months later. CPS got involved with her family and deemed her unsafe with them, that's all I was told. I found out years later, well into my teens, that her aunt reported the girl's mom and dad for letting their kid's grandfather, sexually abuse her. Like, her parents knew it was happening and willingly let it happen. When the girl's aunt found out about the games she tried playing with me, her aunt questioned her gently into telling her where she learned that behavior. Then her aunt told my dad to warn me and to not let me go to the girl's house alone if at all. He never did anyways, it was always at the aunt's house, and her and my dad worked together to report the situation. He made sure I wasn't involved because he didn't want to give me any trauma from it. But he did let me know that even though I was older he wouldn't have immediately put all the blame on me, and that I could talk to him about anything. To make it worse, they also had a 2-year-old daughter that he would do this to. I threw up when I found out the truth. I never heard from them again and I always wonder if she's healing. She'd be 21 now. I will never know. I could never find them. ETA. I just wanted to make an edit to thank everyone for the kind responses and for sharing your stories. I don't talk about this with people because I feel sort of guilty in some way. Either for not doing something sooner, or for letting her do it the first time until I realized what she was doing, that is, or for being older and not saying anything to an adult. I don't know. But to those who read this and have been through the same, I am so sorry. And to those who were that girl in my story, I am so sorry. If anyone needs someone to talk to, please feel free to reach out to me. It's hard to go through things alone, and I know sometimes all a person needs is someone who will listen. I wish everyone the best. Help is out there, and just know that this stranger loves you. As a child molestation victim, I am sorry that happened to you. Truly, you didn't know why that was happening, you just knew it was wrong. This breaks my heart for her. That her parents knowingly let it happen. Mine didn't, and to this day, still don't. I carry that with me forever. God, this breaks my heart for her. I am so sorry. Memories like these are so difficult. I hope you have been able to forgive yourself. In situations like these, I ask myself if I would hold that 4-year-old accountable or if I would judge them for their behavior at the time. The answer is almost always no. You were a child too, and you can't judge yourself the same way as if you did this today as an adult. No one would judge a 4-year-old for this. When I was 12, my mom got drunk one night and told me to drink with her. She was pretty aggressive about it and I was too intimidated to say no since I had a habit of agreeing to almost anything. I started drinking and she'd regularly supply me with alcohol so she could have a drinking partner. I struggled with alcoholism for over 15 years. I've been sober for over 4 now, but all of my teen years and most of my 20s were absolutely lost. Wish I had been more brave and not taken that first drink. Edit. Wow, I wasn't expecting so many replies. Just want to say thank you to everyone who shared their own experience and offered their sympathies. I'm sorry some of you also had a similar experience. Addiction can feel impossible to escape. To anyone who's overcome their own struggles with alcoholism, I'm so proud of you, and I hope you are too. Smiley face. Not sleeping in my dying father's bed with him. He asked me to because he didn't want to be alone. I was 18 at the time and wasn't not prepared for all this. Until the day I die I will never forgive myself. Reality takes form for us at various different ages. You being 18 shows that you were emotional enough to realize it's a lot for you. Now that you're older, you feel that you could handle it tenfold. I feel for you. He's your father and loved you. I'm certain he understood. When I was 5, me and a friend found a frog down by the river. Being kids, we had no common sense yet. We kept throwing it in the air and watched it bounce off the ground, thinking it must be having fun. It died, of course. At 60, I still can't look at a frog without feeling guilty. One time when my family was camping and I was maybe 8 years old, I found a bunch of jellyfish in a puddle next to the ocean. They must have been carried there by the waves or something. The puddle was pretty big and almost connected to the ocean, but the poor things were trapped there. I climbed onto a big rock in the middle of the puddle and leaned down as far as I could to reach them. Once I'd gotten a hold of a jellyfish, I quickly stood up on the rock and jumped back to the land with the jellyfish in my hand. Then I released it into the ocean. I repeated this process several times to get as many jellyfish out as I could, and tried to do it as quickly and gently as I could. As I did it, I kept reassuring them, "It's okay, I've come to save you. You'll be free again really soon. You're safe with me." But eventually, one of the jellyfish slipped out of my hands as I jumped off the rock, and instantly shattered into a glibbery mess when it hit the ground. In my entire 8-year-old life, I had never felt as guilty as I did in that moment. I thought I was saving it.